This is the inevitable impeachment of President Trump. The iconic glasses. Yes. My name is Jashay Miller. I petitioned the Constitution's checks and balances, which is absolutely necessary. The checks and balances is what upholds the integrity of the Constitution. Here you will see that petition to the President Donald Trump. This is Donald Trump's impeachment. This is the reason why he will be impeached by the Constitution, refusing to honor the Constitution's checks and balances. The Constitution's checks and balances uphold the integrity of the Constitution. This is reason for impeachment. This is obstruction of justice. As they will all tell you, the reason for President Trump's impeachment is obstruction of justice. Now, as you see in these checks and balances, you will see Stephen Mnuchin as the motive for corruption in the United States Supreme Court is to conceal the crime by Evansville County Judge David Kiley, who violates the 13th and the 14th Amendments, America's number one thing, imposed slavery in the land of the free and the home of the brave. In this, you also see Jeff Sessions, the United States Attorney General, whose number one duty is to enforce the federal laws. In this, for the Constitution's checks and balances, an entire judicial branch of government corruption, we must start at the top. And that is evidence in its own the United States Supreme Court. As you will see this seal, you will see this has been filed July the 17th, where it calls for the United States Supreme Court to concede to the Constitution's checks and balances. They must be checked, and they have refused to be checked. That's in defiance of the Constitution. That in itself is admissible guilt, refusing to be checked. And once again, you will see, as you can freeze this and read it, takes precedence over all matters, the checks and balances which are central, meaning mandatory by law. Now here we go back to the president. This is mandatory by law, of which the President Donald Trump refuses to honor the Constitution checks and balances, which is his supreme duty to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution's checks and balances. It says here, the petition is supported by irrefutable evidence. The United States Supreme Court imposed slavery, prohibited by the 13th Amendment, an act against the law whose motive is to conceal the crime pursuant to Title 18, Section 243, and deny $50 million, which is now $350 million because of continued oppression and denying rights to freedom of the press. That means there's no transparency. You people, you students, you workers all across America, even the Trump supporters have to concede to this. He refuses to honor the Constitution's checks and balances. It's time, checkout time for the president. Now, like I said, along with this goes a lot of officials, as Congress has been petitioned to honor the Constitution's checks and balances. And where even Congress refused to adhere to the demands of the Constitution. This is mandatory by law. They must be checked. They refuse to be checked. It's check out time. the revolution will be televised, contrary to Gil Scott-Heron. This is the revolution to whereas the Constitution is upheld by the checks and balances intended to stop abuse of power. Now, in doing this, what we have here also, a lot of heads gonna fall. There's corrupt judges. These corrupt judges, that's judicial misconduct, goes to the 7th Circuit, as you see right here. The list of corrupt judges is Federal Judge Richard Young denying $50 million upon the evidence the right to a fair trial, guaranteed by the 6th Amendment. The 14th Amendment right to due process. When a citizen's freedom is taken in violation of the 14th Amendment due process, that violates the 13th Amendment, imposing slavery. Now, as we do this, there are officials overlooking even them. The Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz is told, here it is, right here, been faxed this. And as you can see, says your fax to Michael E. Horowitz has been sent successfully. In this, it says to me, Inspector General Michael Horowitz report to Congress that the entire judicial branch is corrupt. The fax motion for the United States Supreme Court to concede to the Constitution's checks and balances require they be checked. Also, his investigators, they were faxed Friday so that they would stop the 7th Circuit from basically letting these corrupt judges go. As I said, you read here, Federal Judge Richard Young, Federal Judge Tanya Pratt, the Magistrate Matthew Brookman. Now check this out. The Chief Judge Janie Magnus Stinson. If the Chief Judge of the federal court is corrupt, it's a trickle-down theory. The rest of the judges are corrupt too. So, here we go. Now, this had to go to the 7th Circuit, United States Court of Appeals. And in that is the Chief Judge of the 7th Circuit, Diane Wood, and also Judge William Conley. So, this went to the 7th Circuit. Now, it says here, all judges denied the guaranteed right to freedom of the press to conceal the Constitution's checks and balances. Once again, all America, all students, what you do, unite of one accord, require that the President of the United States, that Congress adhere to the Constitution checks and balances, requiring them to be checked. They must be checked. That's the whole catch. These judges are concealing this from the American public by denying the First Amendment right to freedom of the press. And in denying this right to freedom of the press, they conceal their own branches, abuse of power and corruption, impose slavery. That will be a government cover-up. In the 7th Circuit, you got the Chief Judge, so they said they send it back, said I made an error. They made that up. You know, the corrupt go and they make it up as they go along. So it's time for the impeachment of President Trump. The entire judicial branch of government is corrupt, as I pointed this out. And here it is. They denied the right to freedom of the press, where it says justice delayed is justice denied. The legal maximum, meaning that if legal redress is available to a party that has suffered some injury but is not forthcoming in a timely fashion, is effectively the same as having no redress at all. This is the basis to expedite the legal system. And what I called for them to do was to order media, CNN, ABC, CBS. Now, one might wonder the checks and balances. The power of the checks and balances is that the checks and balances was Watergate. That required Tricky Dick. President Richard Nixon, he had to bow down, sign out before he faced the checks and balances. Okay, now, so let's have President Trump be checked. He has refused to honor the Constitution's checks and balances, which is obstruction of justice, which he's covered up for the corruption in the judicial branch, as I showed you. And the checks and balances gave me power, as I am the one that petitioned it. And I'm saying it again. Here it goes. Without the checks and balances system, there would be a constant struggle between the president. I told you the president. I showed you Congress. They don't want to be checked. Now, over Congress is the United States Comptroller General Eugene Luis Didero. Go to YouTube, JESHAMILLER, and go down. The Comptroller General of the United States called me. You think I ain't big? You think the revolution ain't being televised? That's right. And what he, under fictitious, that he's the Comptroller General of the United States. Why is he faking out? What's your name? Lewis. His name is Eugene Luis Didero. Then, when I called back and found out that it's him, I told him, it's me, petition the Constitution, checks and balances. It's me that they got to face. I'm going to tell you, so what you got to do, call a press conference. They cannot bring this to light. The devil works in the darkness. If they was corrupt, then they want to keep this from being seen. They do not want to be checked. All America, all students, call for them to be checked. This is what that is. The Constitution checks and balances uphold the integrity. If they are clean, then they will be checked, and that upholds the integrity. But they not clean, they crooked, and Trump's in with them. Now, the buck stops with the president. Harry S. Truman, president, made that famous. The buck stops with the president. When the president cannot bring this from the darkness to the light, it's checkout time. Time to be impeached. And it says, it is the natural for each party would try to expand their powers. That's from the president to Congress to the Supreme Court, as you have seen. The Supreme Court refuses to concede to the Constitution. That's the stamp. That's the ballot. All Americans, all across America, time to stand up and make government be checked. They must be checked. And now, as it goes on to state, a struggle between the president, Congress, and the Supreme Court. But they didn't struggle. What they did was they made an agreement. Everybody's got the power. You kept wondering how President Trump was doing what he was doing, and Congress wasn't doing nothing about it. Because it's a deal. Each one of them has taken their separate powers. And it says Congress will start making laws that makes it more powerful. The president will use his own power on the armed forces to gain influence, and the Supreme Court will cut deals with Congress by using its power to judge court cases. The right to freedom of the press is one of the safeguards of the Constitution. That is what the citizens use to expose corrupt officials. Should bring this back up here because it's going to drop the bomb on them, like I said. President Trump. Not only that, as you will see, spades of Trump. Before that, he even took office. He already knew about this. I'm going to tell you about He's concealing that the United States Supreme Court is corrupt, and he's appointing what? He's appointing justices. Now, how do you appoint justices when you already know that the United States Supreme Court is corrupt? You have a duty to clean this up, and he refused to do it. It's checkout time. Even the Trump supporters can't say nothing about this. It's checkout time. You're not upholding the Constitution of the United States. And as I said, when we go into this, what you have here then is we have to back things up. So what do? Well, first thing they want to do when they owing me $300 million. Yeah, $300 million. Y'all want to see this again? Put the freeze mode on. It was $50 million. Now, because of their continued oppression, it rose to $350 million. And then, so, what did they do? I'm a journeyman machinist. Oh, did I tell you I'm a veteran serving to protect all citizens' rights to freedom, justice, and equality? A veteran of the United States Air Force. I did go Air Force 1, 2 on my duty at Kinchlow Air Force Base. Check that out, Mr. President. So, here you go. Enemy of the state. Break down, get rid of your job, your earned income. But, hold up, wait a minute. It's me you gotta face. So, what you gotta do, I got a status quo. And not only that, you owe $350 million, pay the $350 million. Now, when I called for the Office of the Inspector General to take this to Congress and take this also to United States Attorney General Jefferson Sessions, because the judicial branch of government is corrupt. Guess what? Here's a guy answering the phone. It's already been faxed. I want to talk to you. Take this to Congress. Take this to the United States Attorney General Sessions, and he said you can't talk to him. Said you can't talk to him. This right here says your duty requires immediate action. Now check it out. The Office of the Inspector General in the United States Department of Justice is a statutorily created independent entity whose mission is to detect and deter waste, fraud, abuse, and hold up, here we go, misconduct in the Department of Justice programs and personnel, and to promote economy and efficiency in those programs. The Office of the Inspector General investigates alleged violations of criminal and civil laws by Department of Justice employees and audits and inspects Department of Justice programs. That's his duty. Now, I called on him to do his duty when, what do we have here? We got crooked judges. Which I showed y'all that, yeah. Crooked judges. What was they supposed to do? Those are the crooked judges. What was it? This is the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, got the United States Supreme Court, so they all corrupt, so it's time to be checked. These judges, the Supreme Court, all this got to be broke down. All of them is corrupt, refusing to adhere to the demands of the Constitution. And the buck stops with the president. It's checkout time. Thank you, America. We all must join in allegiance of the Constitution's checks and balances, requiring the president, the judicial branch, and Congress to be checked. I told you what it was. Y'all catch that? It's the revolution, and it's checkout time for President Trump. Your ride's been over. I mean, you've been petition to honor, what it says, honor the Constitution's checks and balances. And all heard the catch. Now, it says honor the Constitution's checks and balances immediately or be impeached. He already knew what the deal was, so ain't none of y'all can cry no tears. What America has to do is we the people uphold the honor of the integrity of the Constitution, and they must be checked. This is what it's all about. Checks and balances. The Judicial Branch don't want to be checked. The United States Supreme Court don't want to be checked. They have to concede to the Constitution. That's what we all working on. That's the supreme law of the land. And they done took it over because they refusing to be checked. So it's checkout time, Mr. President. Holla! Yo, I represent we the people. And it's time that we the people call on government to be checked for corruption and abuse of power. You need water? Walter Cronkite. And that's the way it is. September the 12th, 2018. Time for the impeachment of President Donald Trump. Thank you.